So are we gonna hear another story today?
Oh, yeah, we're gonna hear another story.
Gonna hear another story today?
Yeah,
oh, good.
yeah.
I like stories. Which story are we gonna hear today?
It's about Abraham and stars.
Is it gonna be about a squirrel?
No, a star.
No?
No.
That's okay.
Okay.
Okay, let's hear the story.
Alright, let's do it.
Time for another story! Woo! Hi guys, welcome back to my house. This is still weird for me. I don't know if it's still weird for you. I bet it is. Today we're gonna hear our next story in this year's Bible story calendar. Are you ready? I am so ready. Let's do this. So it's important to remember that each bit of the Bible that we hear has a bit that comes before it and a bit that comes just after it, except for the very beginning and the very end. There's a lot in the middle. And today is a little story where there's something before and there will be something after. I'm going to give us a little sneak peek into what was happening before the bit that we're going to hear. So there's this dude named Abram, and one of his family members was living in a big city. And the big city and a couple other big places joined up and they got in this big war with these other places. And it was very scary, especially for Abram, who was worried about his nephew, who was in that big city, who was also fighting in that war. And part of what Abram does, with the help of God, is to bring together over 300 men, but not that much over, to go and try and rescue his nephew and save the people that are being fought by invaders. Abram does that, he rescues his nephew, and all of the people that run these big kingdoms that were being oppressed by the invaders give Abram all this money, all these jewels, all this awesome stuff, and it's like, please take this, please, you saved us, please have it. And Abram's like, I can't take your money. That's not what's important to me. And he leaves. And that's when our story starts. And I have another screen from our storybook, and we're gonna read through it now.
God's promises to Abram. God came to Abram and made a promise. Abram, you are very special to me. I will take care of you and give you lots of children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. But Abram asked God many times, Are you sure? I don't have any children yet. God thought Abram needed something more to help him understand, so God took Abram outside and showed him the night sky. Your family will include as many people as there are stars in the sky, God told Abram. Abram stared up at all those stars. He couldn't begin to count all those twinkling lights. Stars and stars and stars all around him. Abram looked up at the stars and saw God at work. Abram believed God.
Do you remember the end of the story that we told last week? It was about Adam and Eve, and at the end they were kicked out of the Garden of Eden by God. Do you remember that? What happened at the very end? So he kicks them out of the garden, but then does he just go, bye-bye, talk to you never, see ya, wouldn't want to be ya? No, you remember the end of that story? God is with them always. God doesn't abandon them. Well, it's important to remember that that's still true. That's part of the truth of that story, right? And it comes into play in this story because Abram brought those 300 plus men to go fight off the invaders, and God didn't abandon him. God made it so that his small little group was successful against these massive armies. And it was also important that God kept his promise to Adam and Eve and remained with them and was with Abram when he was fighting off the invaders. God keeps God's promises. In that story that you just saw in the book, there was a promise as well. God made a promise to Abram and promises that he will have descendants, which is a word that means your children and their children and their children and their children all the way down through history. Abraham would have descendants that were more numerous than the stars. I've got a question for you, and I want you to pause the video after I ask it and talk to your grown-ups about your answer. How do you feel when you are outside on a clear night, no clouds, and you can look up and see all the stars in the sky? How does that make you feel? I want you to pause the video and talk about that with your grown-ups and with the family around you. I can tell you how it makes me feel. It makes me feel very small. Because, in a good way, because I look at all of the things in the sky and I think I'm just a tiny little piece of this massive creation that God made. And I'm okay with feeling little itty bitty tiny because I know that God still loves me and knows my name, knows my dog's name. God knows everything about me, even though I'm this tiny little piece in this huge huge creation. I've got a picture to show you that just gives you a tiny little snapshot of some of that night sky. This is taken from a telescope, which is like a camera that can see really, really far away and take really big pictures. So here's a picture of a tiny little piece of this night sky taken from outer space. So let's look at that picture.
Each of these little dots, each of those bright dots is a star, like our sun is a star. So look at all of these. Some are really, really bright, like those few there. A bunch are really close together. And then if you squint your eyes really tiny, you can see even more stars that are itty bitty in the back. Some are orange. Look at those orange stars. And some are white, bright. Look at all those stars. Can you imagine all of those stars? Well, you don't have to because they're real. This is a photo of our universe. This exists. If we had a strong enough camera, we could all see this. Look at that. Look at those big stars. So many stars.
It would be pretty hard to count those stars. I want us to do a little experiment. But for it, you're gonna need to go grab something. So you can pause me and go grab a towel, like a bath towel, and bring it back here. I'm gonna do the same thing. Okay, I got my towel. Mine has elephants on it. See all the different elephants? What we're gonna do is we're gonna lay our towels down on the floor. So let's do that.
Okay, my towel's on the floor now. Now what do I do?
Well, buddy, what we're gonna have to do is we're gonna have to look really closely at our towel, and we're gonna have to count some stuff. And I don't know if you can count.
Oh, I can count.
You can?
Oh yeah, I'm really good at counting.
Okay, well then you can help, but we're gonna have to zoom in really close so you can see what we're counting.
Well, okay, here I'm gonna get closer. Okay, I'm ready.
Okay, buddy, now if you look really closely at a towel, really close, you can see it's made up of all these little sticky out bits of fabric that are actually little loops. And what I want us and our friends and you to try to do is to count all those little loops, okay?
Well, okay, I can try.
Okay, you try, and I'll come back when you're done.
Oh, okay.
One eternity later.
So did you do it? Did you count all the loops? Oh, no, I couldn't because, you know, there are just so many and I just couldn't.
Oh, that's okay, buddy, because that's actually what I wanted our friends to realize too. They didn't have to count all the loops in their towel.
Oh, well, then why'd you make me try to count all those loops? I counted those loops.
Oh, that's okay, but don't worry, because that was the whole point. You can't count all those.
No, I can't count all those.
Exactly, you can't count all those loops.
There's too many.
That's what I'm saying. So imagine that each little loop that makes up this towel was a star in the sky, and God told Abram, that all of these loops, maybe even on both sides, because there's loops on this side too, all of these loops were going to be as numerous as his descendants, as his kids who have kids who have kids who have kids who have kids. Each little loop was one of those descendants. Abram and his wife Sarah were old. You might think, well, how old's old? Who's the oldest person you know? Picture them and then make them 20 years older than that. That's how old Abram and Sarah were. And they didn't have any kids. And when you're that old, you don't have kids anymore. You can't. But God told Abram that each loop was going to be a descendant of his. Well, how could that be? Well, what we remember from our other story is that if God makes a promise, God's going to keep that promise. So it came true. All of those little loops, all those stars in the sky, that's how many descendants Abram had, because he and Sarah had a child, just one. That one child would have children who would have children who would have children who would have children, and all of the sky is filled with all of the descendants. We could be part of this massive family and part of the huge creation that God made. All those stars in the sky. We can be a part of that. I think that's pretty cool.
You think that's cool, buddy? Well, I don't know. I'm still rather upset that you had me try to count all those loops. I was counting a lot of loops, and it was just a lot of work. So I'm not as excited as you, but it's pretty cool.
So just as it would have been impossible for me or for Buddy to have counted all the loops on that towel, or for you, it would have been impossible for Abram to have counted all of the stars in the sky when God told him to look up. Say, all of those stars are going to be your descendants. Each star means one descendant. Abram must have been blown away by that and felt maybe a little bit unsure. He didn't have any kids. He was very old. But we remember the truth of the Bible story from last week. And it's the same truth in this one. God doesn't abandon us. God didn't abandon Abram, and God doesn't abandon us now, even when we're feeling really down. I bet Abram was feeling really down about not having any kids. Maybe that's all he wanted. But God said, don't you worry. You're not going to even be able to count how many descendants you're going to have. So that's the truth of the Bible story from this week. God makes some really big promises, but we have to remember the truth from last week. God does not abandon us, and the truth is that God will keep God's promises. Like I said last week, I think that's a pretty good truth. Well, I think I've tired Buddy out with trying to count all those loops, so I think we might go for a little W-A-L-K. If you don't know what that spells, ask somebody nearby what it spells. I can't say it out loud. But we hope to see you next week. We're gonna learn another Bible story, learn some more truths, get another kiss on the nose. We'll see you guys next week. You say bye? Bye! See you guys next week.